Edouard Labruyere, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to see you virtually, at least. It's not the same as seeing you face to face, but we do what we can in these times of COVID. We have 4 wines to look at this evening. So Edouard, who's run the Labruyere family estates since 2008, has worked with Corny & Barrow. We've been fortunate enough to represent these 2 estates as exclusive UK importer since the 2013 vintage. We are going to look at 4 different wines, as you know, from 2 of the family estates. The original family estate in Moulin-Avant in Beaujolais is going to represent the first 2 wines that we're looking at this evening. So we're going to start with Champ de Cour, 2017. And then we're going to move on to Le Clos du Moulin-Avant, 2016. Then we're going to hop up geographically to Burgundy or Bourgogne. And we're going to look at the Volnay-Centenot, 2016, and finish with the white, finish with the Meursault Clos de Marceret, 2018. So 4 wines, 2 distinct areas, and 4 different vintages, in the sense that we'll talk about the 2019s a little bit as well. So we're going to taste wines from 16, 17, 18, and then we'll have a few words about the 19s as well. Edouard, the only other thing I wanted to say was that what a pleasure it is to have somebody who comes from Moulin-Avant, who has branched out into the Côte d'Or and beyond into, even though we're not looking at it this evening, Bordeaux. The family also owns Chateau Rouget in Pomerol, and recently Champagne as well. So Champagne Labruyere in Verzenay. So what an amazing thing to be able to do, to have a foothold in all of those 4 prestigious areas. Edouard, over to you.
Thank you, Guy. Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm very, very pleased to be able to make a connection with you through the web. It's such a bizarre period for us. We love to share our passion by showing you what we do in face-to-face at the winery, or whether in the UK, when I love to come to Corny & Barrow offices or some different places to meet you. Thanks through Zoom and to Colette, we are able to do this through internet. I'm very pleased. It's bizarre for me to be in front of you through a screen, but I'm well. I have some guys beside me with the 4 bottles, so I think we'll be able to talk about that. First of all, I'd like to share a toast with you. And we're going to start with the Champ de Cour 2017, and it will be a good introduction for me to talk a bit, just a few words about the 2019 vintage. Sorry for my voice. I've lost my voice somewhere in the vineyard. I don't know where. I don't know if it's in Bordeaux, Champagne, Bourgogne, or Moulin-Avant, but hopefully you can hear me, and my voice will not leave me before the end of the tasting. So 2019, a spectacular vintage in Moulin-Avant. Very, very hot spring. Then we have abnormally cold weather during May and June. And then another spectacular canicule during July, August. But thanks to the age of the vineyard, our vineyard is more than 60 years old. Thanks to the sustainable viticulture we had, thanks to our management of the harvest and the winemaking, we are very, very pleased with the quality we have with the 19 Moulin-Avant is currently slipping into the barrels. We will bottle it between maybe April, May for the first cuvée, up to July for Le Clos. And it's the only drawback of 19 is that we don't have a lot because of this accidents of Mother Nature. We had a lot of coulure, so we could not transform all the flowers into fruits, so the yields are very, very low, but the quality is amazing. We have a pure vintage, what I call a pure vintage, great acidity, great fruit. It reminds me a bit of 2010 somewhere by some aspect, and I'm sure you will enjoy it as soon as you will receive the bottles. But feel free. Yes, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. I talk, even if I don't have any voice, I talk too much. So if you want to be sure that I can talk until the end of the tasting, please interrupt me so that I will be able to cut my voice for a few seconds and try to give you as much as I can some answer to the good questions you will ask.
Absolutely. If anyone asks a question in the chat, I'll be keeping Guy and myself, and hello everyone, evening, Joe here. As many of you might know me, we'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll pose the questions to Edouard as we have some fun. Great.
So, except if you have some question about 2019 in Moulin à Vent, but really, it reminds me in some parts 2000, 2010, somewhere 2016, but with more depth, more intensity. It's, even if it was very solar, it's not a solar vintage, because the heat was very well done by the vineyard. So we were able to manage the good level of acidity. The good thing with global warming for Moulin à Vent and for the Gamay is that now we have the good balance between maturity and acidity, and it's even more the case with 2019.
Edouard, would you say that it was the case in 19 that you had these kind of peaks in between the, you had peaks of heat, but then in between those peaks, you had periods of freshness.
Yeah.
And that kind of, along with the natural concentration of the acidity that you got because of the low yields, that allows producers to maintain this real sense of freshness and acidity.
You're perfectly right. It was even more the case during nights. The nights were quite cold, even during summer. And you know that in Moulin à Vent, we are on the soil made of granite. And when it's very hot, the granite gives the sun back to the fruit during nights. But thanks God, we had a fresh night. And so the level of acidity is spectacular. It's the good acidity, which means that, you know, that there are two acidities in the wine, and the good one is very, very, very intense, and so it gives some freshness to the wine, with a color, with an intensity that reminds me some of the greatest vintage of Moulin à Vent. We can maybe continue with the Chancourt 2017. So Chancourt is my troublemaker. You know, that's all my cuvées are my babies and my kids. And the Chancourt is very close to Le Clos, but the soil is quite different. Actually, 99% of Moulin à Vent is made of granite, but at Chancourt, we also have a small lane of clay, and that gives this wine always a different tasting from the others. You can feel something common between the Cœur de Terroir, between Le Carquelin and Le Clos, and Chancourt is always on the side because of this touch of clay. We are basically 6 different producers of Champ de Cour, and we own 1.4 hectares of Champ de Cour, made of what makes Chancourt is a very, very old vineyard planted by my grandfather. I'm the 6th generation of wine grower in Moulin à Vent. And Chancourt was planted by my grandfather 60 years ago. It's a fantastic vineyard because it's down to the slope, so it is protected from the wind. We have a good maturity, and even with the intensity of the sun, because of the clay is able to give back the humidity and the water to the vineyard during hot summer. And so I have a lot of expectation of about Champ-Cours since I took over from my dad in 2008. And we usually during like 80% or between 80 to 90% of our vineyard in Moulin à Vent, we usually destem all the cuvée. But because of the clay, Champ-Cours is always the cuvée that we keep some stems and we use vendange entière, so wild berries fermentation. And we do that more than Champ-Cours than anywhere else because of the clay, because it gives some delicate aspect to the wine. It surrounds the wine with a touch of silkiness that we don't have usually because of the clay. So, and I think it's more and more accurate on this 2017 vintage, where the sun was here, but we also have some difficulties to grow the maturity up to what we wanted. And because of the vendange entière, sorry for this French word, we are able to,
fermentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just in case people,
wild bunch fermentation, we are able to give this taste with all those spices aspects that are able to show now, even if the wines are young. Please feel free to share your opinion about this wine. But as you can see on the color, the color is pretty deep, pretty intense. It's ruby, and then on the nose, we don't expect that kind of nose from a Moulin à Vent so young. And I think it's of course the terroir, of course the whole cluster fermentation, and of course the aging in wooden vats. We use more and more 600 liters instead of 228 liters wooden vats, just to be sure that we don't have too much oaky aspect to the wine. And we keep the wine on the lees during the 18 months of the aging without touching it. There is no racking, there is no stirring, so no batonnage, and we keep the wine on the lees like this. And thanks to this, we are able to have this kind of wine.
Yeah, there's a beautiful purity of fruit on this 17, Edouard. And would you say that's more the character of sort of, I guess, a sort of the clay input? Because I mean, it kind of almost resembles that purity you get in some, obviously, Côte de Beaune and Côte d'Or wines, Pinot.
Yeah, clearly the clay is the main responsible of this purity, this level of acidity. And I'm always questioning myself about, do we have to do like 100% all cluster fermentation or only 50% as we do at Domaine Labruyere with Corton-Bressand and Clos Vougeot? It's always tricky. The fine tuning is always difficult to find. But we with Nadine, we finally always agree about on that kind of vintage like 17 to give the purity, to give the finesse, to give the silkiness of the vintage. We have to use 100% whole cluster fermentation, and that's and maybe it's difficult to say that because I don't want to put any glorification of ourselves, but it's a key point of success to make those 17 Champ-Cours so pure and so delicate to taste right now.
And what would you say, even sort of with the ageability of Champ-Cours, because again, that purity is there and it's got that real sort of, there's a mineral tension too. It feels it could age. Yeah,
the level, as you can taste, the level of acidity is right there, right at the end. It's a good level of acidity. It doesn't cut your mouth. It just keep your mouth fresh. And I think that's a good sign that we have the good acidity to be able to age, I don't know, maybe The peak of tasting will be between 5 to 10 years. And then it depends on your personal taste. I can't be, to be very honest with you, when people say, ask me, how long can I keep this bottle? And I say, I don't know your personal taste. If you like wine on the youth, when they are on the fruits, on the power, so buy from Carnier & Barrel a case of 12 and or 2 cases of 6, and open a bottle every month or every year, and so you will be able to test it during the next few months and or next years. Hopefully, you will test them and you will drink them before the end of the year, so you will be able to buy whether the current vintage or new one.
What I think is great about your wines from Moulin Avant is that you have the natural exuberance and the sort of loveliness of the Gamay grape. And then on the other side, you have these sort of heavy clay-based soils in this case, or you have granitic soils in the case of the next wine we're going to look at. And that provides a really nice juxtaposition in terms of the taste profile. You have this sort of very voluptuous grape, and then you have quite austere soils. And they come into harmony really beautifully. I just wonder if it's interesting to talk a little bit about, I know you don't think of yourselves as a Beaujolais producer in that sense, but obviously geographically that's where you are. And maybe talk about Moulin Avant a little bit and how you guys fit into the sort of setup there.
Yeah, so my great-great-grandfather established in 1815 Moulin Avant. We are one of the eldest family over there. We own at 90%, we own the same 14 hectares since 1850. And so we try to keep this for the next generation. My goal is to make sure that there were 5 generations before me, and my goal is to make sure that there will be 5 or 6 generations after me. What you can see on your screen is the windmill, so the Moulin Avant, and the clos is just at the bottom of the windmill. So it's the only monopole of the Moulin Avant. And so the Moulin Avant appellation was created in 1936. A bit more than 400 hectares, and we own 14 over there, exclusively in Moulin Avant. Since 1850, we only make Moulin Avant. We try to, every generation, try to implement new stuff. My goal will be to have a better explanation of each terroir. That's the reason why I created the Cuvée Champ de Cour, the Carquelin, the Clos on the side, and the Cœur de Terroir. And we have different soils. We have the pure granite on the rock, which is the Clos, and we have this Champ de Cour with the clay. And I perfectly agree with Guy. I think on 17, with the clay and the vintage, we have the best of the two worlds. The best of the finesse given by the Gamay when it's properly ripe, and the freshness given by the clay. And I think that's very particular to our property, is that we are able to make the wine differently depending on the cuvée we are. Really, Nadine and I are really focused to create the best ambassadors of the terroir. I don't want a signature of Domaine Labruyere. I want a signature of the terroir. And if you test Le Clos side by side by Le Carquelin, side by side by Cœur de Terroir, side by side by Champ de Cour, you will have different expressions of the terroir of Moulin Avant, and it's made on purpose. My goal is to make sure that you make a journey within the Moulin Avant appellation. And if one day, and this Doom tasting is an invitation for you to come, and you will be able, through the bottles, to see the differences of the terroir. And I really encourage you to come and visit us, and we will be able to show you that even if we are on a general terroir, we have some specificities, and those specificities are able to be found into each bottle.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Out of the 10 crew supposedly that makes up Beaujolais, it's just too broad. It's crazy. I mean, Guy and I have been very fortunate to visit Edouard in Moulin-à-Vent and Nadine. And like you said, you can't just classify that piece of earth that stretches across Moulin-à-Vent as one crew. There are so much different typicities within the soils as well, and aspects plays a big part as well. So yeah.
You know, Moulin-à-Vent is the only cru of Beaujolais that doesn't have the name of a village. Usually when you have Brouilly, it's because of the village of Brouilly, Morgon, Chénas, and so on. Moulin-à-Vent is shared between the village of Romanèche-Torin and Chénas. And Moulin-à-Vent, it's the mosaic of terroir. You don't have a same single terroir all over the 400 hectares of Moulin-à-Vent. And we tried our best to implement those differences into our bottles. And just to show you that by making the same viticultural process, the same harvest, the same kind of harvest, the same winemaking process and the same aging, we have different approaches to the Gamay. And it's very, very interesting. So maybe we can continue on the Clos.
Yes, please.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say it's a good opportunity to maybe speak about the differences between 16 and 17 as vintages, because sure. 16 was a pretty small vintage, I think.
Was what? Sorry.
A small vintage in terms of quantities.
Well, I must say I don't have I must confess I don't have a good souvenir of 16. Because of the hail. We were highly impacted by the hail, and that's the reason why we produced 50%, only 50% of a regular production of Moulin-à-Vent. But 16 is the perfect example when the terroir is great, when the vineyard is well implemented into the soil, you can produce fantastic wines. And what was not impacted by the hail was just a fantastic vintage, produced a fantastic vintage. Let me just do a quick overview of what is Le Clos. Le Clos is unique. In 1936, when the appellation Moulin-à-Vent was created, only one Clos monopole was created. So it's 0.92, less than 1 hectare of vines that surrounds the windmill. And where in the 15th century, when they created the windmill, they put it on the place where the rock, the granite was very, very, very strong. It was very at the surface. And planting some vineyards at the bottom of the windmill was quite a challenge by the eldest. And it's not normal. And when I come with my viticultural consultants, whether they are from Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne, or elsewhere in the world, everybody says, but how can you grow some vineyard here? There is only rock. Actually, you only have that size of earth, and then it's the rock. So usually when you have a vine, you have the vine like this, and you have the roots that goes on that way, which is quite 360 degrees on the soil. But on the Clos, it's just vertical because you have to go, the roots have to go on the fall. And so it's a nonsense to have planted some vines over there, but that's the vineyard that give the name to the appellation. So our older cousins created Le Clos du Moulin-à-Vent before the appellation Moulin-à-Vent was created. So Le Clos has a specific story, and that's the reason why it's the only one monopole of the whole Moulin-à-Vent appellation that was recognized by the board of appellation d'origine in France. So Le Clos, 1 hectare. Some of the vines are older than 100 years old. Like 20 years ago, we still had some pre-phylloxeric plants, Now I only have few, and that can tell you that even the phylloxera cannot go into Le Clos because the soil was so rude, and it's such a microclimate within Le Moulin à Vent. We pick up Le Clos very late compared to the other parcel we have, just because of this rock that take a longer time for the vines, and because also the vines are older to get the good maturity. Le Clos, when we produce maximum 20 to 25 hectoliters per hectare at Le Clos, it's really the maximum. We usually don't go that far just because of the age of the vineyard. And Le Clos needs always more time to start the fermentation, the alcoholic fermentation, then more time to start the malolactic one, then more time to age, then more time to be bottled. So it's the kind of wine that was on a blind testing on specific vintages. You can easily be confused by Le Clos, and you can easily believe that Le Clos is 100 miles north in Côte d'Or instead of Moulin à Vent. When Le Clos was Moulin à Vent was created in 1936, Le Clos was the perfect example given to the French appellation that Le Moulin à Vent was the only one appellation to be declassified into Bourgogne. The other cru in 1936 couldn't do that. Le Moulin à Vent was, thanks to Le Clos, was able to do that, and it stayed like this for a couple of years before the other cru joined the possibility during the time. It's not the case now, but it used to be for a long time. We had the possibility to declassify Le Moulin à Vent first, then the other cru into Bourgogne. And 16 was just perfect for Le Clos. We had the hail at the bottom of the appellation, and we had the hail on some of our great terroir that used to make the Cœur de Terroir, which is our blend cuvée. But Le Clos was not impacted at all. And when you taste that, you can have a lot of regrets of what would have been 2016 without that hail. And I think it's that kind of wine that really can reconcile people with the Moulin à Vent and with the cru of Beaujolais, because it's. But you will have to tell me what you think about that, about this 16 vintage.
Yeah, it's with Le Clos, Edouard. It's a wine I love to show blind on quite a few occasions to friends and family, customers, because for me, I still remember this eye-opening moment the first time we tried your wine, and particularly with Le Clos. It's that density and the weight and structure which I just never had experienced personally within again Beaujolais. I know this is Moulin à Vent, which is very different, and that's what I've grown to learn and understand over the years working with you. But it's stunning because it captures that structure, but the finesse and aromatics as well, which, like you said, you could be 100 kilometers north.
What impresses me as well is that I totally agree that you could be in the north in the Côte d'Or, and there is a Pinot Noir like lightness and sort of vibrance to it, but it also reminds me a little bit of the sort of spiciness of the Rhone. So it kind of, it goes north, but it also goes south.
Yeah.
I mean that as a compliment. I think it has something of the sort of the complexity of Syrah, and I find that juxtaposition really beguiling. It's a wine which is hard to put a finger on because it seems to reach its tentacles both north and south.
Yeah, I will tell you one thing. In 2015, you know that every year we have to present to the board of the appellation your wine to be sure that you receive the agreement to put on the label that you have a Moulin à Vent or a Clos Vougeot or a Pomerol or whatever. And when we present to the board of the appellation Le Clos 2015, the board said that it is not a pure Gamay. We should have add some Syrah in it. And we had a control about the board, checking that we didn't plant and we didn't add any Syrah into Le Clos 2015. So Le Clos 15 is the run style. Le Clos 16 is more or less a Chambol style. It depends. With Le Clos, you travel. With or without COVID, you travel with Le Clos, and it's a good way. When you open a bottle and you miss your flight, just open a bottle of Le Clos, and you will sure you will make your journey. And every vintage, I'm always confused. Believe me, even I grew up, I think I have more Clos than blood into my arm. When people sometimes make some prank to me or try to cheat me, they open a bottle of Le Clos, and depending on the vintage, it's always very tricky to recognize this wine, because this wine is a UFO. It's something that is that belongs officially to Moulin à Vent, but it has its own reaction to a vintage. And Nadine, who is a fantastic winemaker and who makes wine in Burgundy for more than 30 years now, when she discovered Le Clos, and each time we do a vertical tasting with Le Clos, each time Nadine says, but how can this vineyard create such a wide range of wine depending on the vintage? And really, Le Clos is considering the borders are not too wide for Le Clos, and it's very interesting. And believe me, I hope you trust me when I taste this 2016. It's hard to say that 16 was a hail vintage. It's hard to say that 16 was a tough vintage to grow in terms of maturity. It's hard to say, and it's hard to believe that 16 is a very concentrate vintage, because here you have, of course, some concentration, but the finesse, but the acidity, but this kind of wine give you thirst. And I should confess, and I will deal with Carney and Bauer. We will start making 75 centiliters, and we will only make magnums, because I think a bottle is not enough for that kind of wine.
I'd love to know what people think of the differences between the first two wines. If anyone has a favorite, you could let us know in the chat box if it's number one or number two for you. But I think they're two very different wines to show side by side, which makes them fascinating. The freshness and the purity and that sort of exotic spice of Champ de Cour, I think, is really beguiling. But then you've got a far denser wine here, and the Clos is more age-worthy, and it's the terroir, I think, is more apparent in the Clos.
I mentioned to you, to the Carney and Bauer team a couple of years ago, that for my dad's birthday, 70th birthday, we asked, my dad and I asked my brother, who works for Airbus, so he's not in the wine business, to pick up 2 bottles of the same vintage in the family cellar, and on the blind tasting. And he picked up a Clos de Tar 1945 and a Clos 1945, and it was 1947, sorry. And it was impossible to tell which one was the Clos and which one was the Clos de Tar. So the more you age Le Clos, the more it looks like a Pinot. And clearly, this 2016 is now a big boy, but it's a wine that you have to wait a bit. This wine it's a long-term aging wine.
Well, it's interesting seeing some comments begin to come in. I totally agree with what you're saying, Edouard. It's quite evenly split so far, I think. Maybe slightly veering towards the Clos as the results are coming in real time. But interesting to see some comments. And I think that freshness of Champ de Cour, which obviously comes from the Vendange entière, the whole bunch fermentation, really lifts the aromas. And I mean, certainly, I think that's a lovely aspect to that wine. But
Edouard, very briefly before we move on to Domaine Labruyere, which I know we need to for timing, but there was a question on there. Someone said that they love the aromatics of Le Clos and asked, was 19 a similar year to 2016? And would that then produce a similar wine? I mean, I know the answer, the vintages are very different, but would you like to elaborate a bit on that?
The power and the intensity of 16 Le Clos, you will be able to find it again in 19 Le Clos also. But for me, the freshness of the 19 will be more accurate when the wine will be young, will be shortly bottled, than on the 16. For the moment on the 16, I love the wine, but it's still a baby. It's very shy and it shows its muscles. It's a muscular wine for me, and I think the finesse of Le Clos will show up in a couple of years when and I think the finesse of the 19 Le Clos will be more obvious during the young age of this wine. I don't know if I answer your question, Joe.
No, absolutely, yeah, no, indeed, yeah. That should be perfect.
16. The problem for me is that I cannot put out of my mind the hail in 16 that prevent me for 50% of my production. But if sometimes I can achieve that goal to put that on the side, really 16 was a fantastic vintage for Moulin à Vent. Is it a fantastic vintage as it was in Pomerol at Château Rouget? Not sure, but it will create wines that we will talk about in a couple of years for sure.
Excellent.
Edouard, just one more question before we move on. Somebody's just asking about the aging potential of Le Clos. I mean, we've touched a little bit on this, but it's what
longer than myself.
Yeah, it's
longer than myself. We haven't found yet the potential of acidity of Le Clos, except if you put on an analysis on this. But I think the acidity will come back in a couple of years. For the moment, the wine is beautiful. It's a fantastic wine, but still on the primary flavors. And I think the acidity is hidden by this fantastic ball of fruits and silk. But the acidity is here, and believe me, the wine will talk longer than I will.
Yeah.
Especially today.
And yeah, Guy and I can vouch for that as well. We it's probably about 4 years ago now. Myself, Guy, and Alison were around the table in your kitchen at the home in Moulin à Vent, and I think it was 85, which you poured us blind, and it was just staggering. How youthful! Yeah,
it's impressive. It's the ability to age of this property and this vineyard is just fantastic. The only drawback is that it's a kind of debate I don't want to go into, but I think we have to show to the people that the quality of the terroir is just fantastic. And when you can find good winemakers, you will enjoy that for forever and for a very long time.
Yeah. Okay, should we go further north?
Sure. I saw just rapidly a question by somebody asking for older vintages. Unfortunately, when I took over from my dad in 2009, my dad sold every old vintages. So except if you come to my home, and you are very welcome with the Corny and Barrow team. But I don't have much older than 2009 to sell. But from 2009 to 2019, just ask Connie and Barrow, and they are my best ambassadors in your country.
Yeah.
Let's move to the other property of the family. I'm very bad at camera and so on, so sorry about this. I don't have I'm not a geek. Domaine Labruyere. Domaine Labruyere came into my family in 1988. We became a co-shareholder of Domaine Labruyere, and from 88 to 2007, we bought the other co-shareholders, and since 2008, we now own 75% of the domain, and the remaining members of the Prieur family still own 25%. Domaine Labruyere, 21 hectares, both on Côte de Beaune and Côte de Nuit, 9 Grands Crus, 15 Premier Crus. Believe me, that gives you more duty than right. We are at the top end of the best terroir of Bourgogne. You can see here some of Le Montrachet, Chevalier Montrachet, Les Combettes, Les Charmes, Les Perrières. I will not mention everything, but we own 2/3 of the vineyard on the Côte de Beaune and 1/3 on Côte de Nuit. In Côte de Nuit, a poor guy we only produce a Grand Cru, La Fistaf. So Échezeaux, Musigny, Clos Vougeot, Chambertin, and Chambertin Claude Bèze, even if Chambertin Claude Bèze is now, but it will change. It's a scoop. It will change. Right now, Nadine like to blend. We have a very small and old plot of Chambertin Claude Bèze. So for 20 years now, 15 years now, we blend the Chambertin Claude Bèze into the Chambertin. But I decided to replant the Claude Bèze with a new vintage, with a new vineyard. So within a couple of years, so between 5 to 10 years, there will be a new Claude Bèze, Chambertin Claude Bèze to Domaine Labruyere.
Oh, fantastic! That's very exciting.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Hopefully, it usually takes between 10 to 20 years to see the results of that. Hopefully, I will drink enough Clos du Moulin avant to be able to test the future Claude Bèze of Domaine Labruyere. Anyway, so Domaine Labruyere, a fantastic property. As I told you, when you own so many monopoles, we have 3 monopoles with part of one is the Claude Mazeret that you have on your screen. Claude Mazeret, 3 hectares, 2.75 planted with Chardonnay, 0.25 planted with Pinot Noir. We also have the Volnay Claude et Centenot, which is a monopole. We have the Beaune Claude Lafiguine, which is a monopole. The Claude Mazeret, during the classification of Burgundy, Claude Mazeret used to be a Premier Cru, but you know that France is the last communist country after North Korea. So we are in 1936 when they decided to create the classification of Burgundy. You had to pay some taxes. If you are a Grand Cru, you pay that level. If you have a Premier Cru, you pay that level. And if you are a village, you pay that level of taxes. And Jacques Prieur in 1936 didn't want to pay, didn't believe in the classification and didn't want to pay the taxes of a Premier Cru. So he declassified Claude Mazeret into a village. That's the reason why the Claude Mazeret is the only one village wine we have in our portfolio. One day or another, I will try to fight again to open the box and try to reclassify Claude Mazeret into a Premier Cru. But I will have to have a better voice than the one I have tonight to make sure I can defend that kind of fight. Nadine.
Yeah, I was gonna mention Nadine, but you've beaten me to it.
Sorry about that. Nadine, the winemaker of Domaine Labruyere since 1990. It's my really most important people on the domain. She loves the domain. She usually says my vineyard when she talks to me. So I like Nadine to make sure that Nadine take the bottle, take the vineyard to her. She's part of the domain, and sometimes she sleeps at the domain because I tell you that she's very happy with the domain. Yeah, Nadine, winemaker of Domaine Labruyere since 1990. winemaker of Domaine Labruyere since 2009, and winemaker of Champagne Labruyere since 2015. And she is a consultant for me in Bordeaux at Pomerol at Chateau Rouget, but Merlot and Cabernet are too far away from the traditional Gamay and Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Sorry about that. I think we should start with the Volnay Centenot. And the picture that Colette put you on the screen is perfect, because you have on the screen the Volnay Clos des Centenot, which is a monopole of Domaine Labruyere, 1.5 hectares, in the middle of les Centenot du Milieu, so the best part of les Centenot. And actually, on the right of this picture, you have the old vines that are older than 60 years old that creates the Volnay Clos des Centenot. And on the left part of the door that you can see on the picture, it's the young vineyard. And we declassify the young vines into the Volnay Centenot. So what you have in your glass and what I have in my hand is the Volnay Clos des Centenot young vines that we declassified into Volnay Centenot. So Volnay Centenot, a fantastic vineyard. As you can see on the picture, it's on the slope. It's a real beauty. Usually we say that if there is a reclassification of a Volnay, Clos des Centenot will be reclassified into Grand Cru. You know, some terroirs in Burgundy, we are questioning ourselves to reclassify some terroirs. And there is always a question about reclassifying the Volnay Clos des Centenot. It's you taste tonight 2016, which was also a challenging vintage. Maybe I should put a bit of silence to you so that you can taste and make sure you're not suffering from thirst. That will be a nightmare for me. Having some customers and wine lovers that suffer from thirst is just a nightmare. So don't hesitate to interrupt me, Joe, Guy, and you, guest, to make sure that we can taste this 2016 Volnay Centenot.
Edouard, we'll give you a break as well, so that you can have a sip and rest your voice for 20 seconds at least. What I always think is fascinating about Centenot is that you have this image of Volnay in your mind as very pretty and perfumed, and it's the most ephemeral, the most delicate, if you like, of the red wines in the Côte de Beaune, the most Chambon Musigny, like if you want. And you then have this patch in the middle, which is Centenot, and especially Centenot du Milieu, which is actually very powerful. And so it slightly goes against the image that we have of Volnay, because it really is quite a substantial wine. And when you find a plot such as yours, where there are really old, venerable vines, it has this real density and power to it. And perhaps it's not everybody's idea of what Volnay typically is.
Yeah, no, I think, nose aromatically, it certainly, it sort of captures that Volnay, that character where you've got the perfume and lift, certainly. But yeah, on the palate, and I think 16 as well, with that hail and the resulting reduced yields, the concentration from those remaining grapes and bunches it's certainly translated into the wine too. And then as you were saying, guys, structurally, it's a wine that has bones and life ahead of it.
Volnay Centenot is always astonishing me just by the power of this wine, but with the silky touch. Some people say feminine touch. I don't like that word because but anyway, it's the silky touch that gives I don't know how you say that in English, but it's a glove. You have a iron hand, but into a
velvet glove.
In a velvet glove, and I think it matches perfectly with Volnay Centenot, Clos des Centenot young vine, so Volnay Centenot, and more specifically in 16, due to the fact that we had very, very small berries, very highly concentrated berries because of the hail. We make a drastic selection of the berries. We only produced naturally 23 hectoliters per hectare. But in final, due to the double sorting table we use, it's only 18 hectoliters per hectare. It's just a wine that is powerful, but with this delicate, with this, it's not a Côte de Nuit. It's close from a Côte de Nuit, but it's not a Côte de Nuit because of this silkiness and this delicate aspect. And in 16, it's hard to believe on a blind tasting that it's a 16. Really, it has the power. It's not a 15, of course, but it has the power, the intensity of an 18 or a 10. I think it's very spectacular. Clos des Centenaires now, it's only 25% new oak barrel, and I think it matches perfectly with that. It's one of the major change at Domaine Labruyere. Before I came, Nadine and my dad loves 100% new oak barrel, and for me, you know, the barrel is just the border of the painting. It doesn't have to be the color of the painting. So by reducing from 100% to 25%, I think we have more purity, more freshness, less oaky aspect. The oak is just here to bore the wine and make sure that we conduct the wine on the right way. But here you have only, I don't know if you said that in English, but gourmandise. It's a kind of wine again that's even in 16, you like to taste again, just to make sure that your first impression was the right one.
Indeed. Edouard, would you say this sort of, out of all your wonderful plots, and as you mentioned earlier, your Premier Cru and Grand Cru, Centenaires and Clos de Centenaires, has that probably been possibly the most challenging part over the last 10 years, given Volnay's really being battered with so many vintages?
I don't know what Volnay did in the past to Mother Nature, but maybe something bad, or people from Volnay have done something very, very bad to Mother Nature. But if you take a look on a 20 years period, it's impressive how many times Volnay was impacted, whether by the hail, by frost, by any natural disease was on Volnay. So it's a challenging village. It's a challenging vineyard, but really even on a difficult vintage, this Clos des Centenaires is astonishing, and it's maybe the reason why Volnay Clos des Centenaires is a clos by itself and was distinguished as a clos by itself. It's because I don't think there is a microclimate, but I think there is something in the soil that allows the vineyard to give something different from the others. And for me, I call the Clos des Centenaires and the Volnay Centenaires the miraculé. It's a miracle. Each time I taste it, I say, wow, how impressive I am, how impressed I am by this wine, even if it's a tough vintage, even if the maturity was tough, even on one of my less favorite vintage, like 2004, which was very, very challenging in Burgundy. Volnay Centenaires and Volnay Clos des Centenaires were like, whoa, where does wine come from? They come from another planet.
Yeah.
Can you imagine one day? Can you imagine one day vinifying them both together? Do you think once the vines are old enough, you'll make one cuvée?
that day, Guy, be sure I'll send you one specific case to you and to all of you on this table. We do it on blind tasting with Nadine. We have Romain, our chef de cab, and he puts side by side every year since 2009 Clos des Centenaires and Clos des Centenaires Jeune Vigne on a blind testing. And I must confess, each year my wallet cries because I have to declassify the Volnay Clos des Centenaires young vines into Volnay Centenaires. Same for Chambertin, Domaine Labruyere, old vines and young vines. If you want a secret, buy the Volnay, the Chambertin young vines from Domaine Labruyere. So the Gevrey Chambertin Premier Cru, it's the young vines of Chambertin. So you have terroir of Chambertin, but declassified into Gevrey Chambertin. You can also buy the the Chambertin Grand Cru. It's one of our best vineyard. But yeah, we have I don't know what they did. I cannot blame them, but like 20, 25 years ago, when they planted, it's not the vineyard is not ready to be blended with the old vines.
Yeah, but it shows, being serious about it. It shows great integrity for you as a producer that you're, you say, okay, it's not quite at the level of the Clos de Centenaire, and we'll make 2 cuvées. So it's and it's also fascinating for us to taste them side by side, maybe, and compare.
We usually taste 3 times to make sure that we make the right decision. And maybe one day I should put a candle in the church of Meursault, say, okay, we can blend the Volnay Clos de Centenaire with the Clos de Centenaire Jeune Vigne. But for the time being, I cannot find the solution. If you have it, you're more than welcome at the property to show me how to blend them without declassifying the quality of the Clos de Centenaire and helping the Volnay Centenaire. Actually, there are 2 different wines. The Clos de Centenaire is really the structure of a Grand Cru, and the wine you get in your glass is a fantastic Premier Cru, a very top-end Premier Cru, but still a Premier Cru.
Yeah. So I think I've just noticed the time. We should probably move on to the white, actually. And,
sorry about that. I talked too much.
No, it's okay.
No, we've been having too much fun.
Hey, Angelo, I told you even without any voice. So believe me, when I have my voice, it's a nightmare. You can sleep in front of your screen. We continue with the Meursault Claude Mazeray. So Meursault Claude Mazeray, one of the flagship of the domain. I told you when we saw the picture on the screen, 3 hectares surrounded by big walls, south of Meursault on the way to Puligny, 2.75 planted with the Chardonnay, 0.25 planted with Pinot Noir. Millions of years ago, it used to be an old river. So that's the reason why there are some sediments on the soil. And those big walls and these soils create like a microclimate. And that's the reason why the appellation d'origine considered the Claude Mazeray as a monopole. We have changed a lot of things since I took over from my dad in 2008 in the winemaking of the white. We stopped the batonnage. We stopped aging in 100% new oak barrels. We use more and more wooden vats, foudre or demi-muid, and we try not to filtrate or fine the wine, so that we can keep the lees and the sediments into the wine, and with that you have an integrity into the wine you taste. And then I saw a specific question on of the cork, and I must confess to you, Domaine Labruyere was not more or less concerned by the Primox problem, and one of the problem of the Primox was due to the cork, and not only because you can find some TCA on the cork or stuff like this. It's just because there was a not heterogeneity of the cork, and we use now diams. I don't know if you are familiar with. It's diam origine, so we don't use its natural cork, but treated to get rid of the TCA problem, and to put it together, they use natural bees cire. How do you say cire d'abeille? Bees
wax. Beeswax.
Beeswax, yeah, to make sure. And so this cork is made of natural cork, natural wax, and there is no TCA. And from one bottle to another, there is no difference, and that allows us also the possibility to divide by 3 the quantity of SO2 we put into our whites to avoid the oxidation. So Meursault Claude Mazeray, it was a Premier Cru. It was declassified into a village, a flagship, the perfect example of what a Meursault should be, not is, should be, which means intensity, a bit of power, but not too much. I don't like to be too buttery, too honey, too oaky, too soapy, too whatever you call it. But for me, it has to get some freshness. It has to have some delicate aspect of the Chardonnay. Not only, I don't know what minerality means, so don't ask me what minerality is. I don't know what it is. I know what it is in terms of sharpness, in terms of acidity, in terms of drinkability. I don't know if you say that in English, we say that in French, and an ability to age also. But it's what a Meursault should be for me. Not too much on reduction, of course, no oxidation, but purity is the good term I like to use.
Yeah, I love drinking this wine because it's always a sense of focus and sort of there's a precision to the wine, like you said. This isn't sort of your sort of benchmark Meursault, which you'll find where you have that richer style, as you said, and this is a perfect testament because this is 2018, which obviously is a warm vintage, and you get that lovely ripe fruit, which is just supported, but it hasn't sacrificed that sort of almost laser sharp acidity and direction, which is in the wine.
Which can be the challenge of 2018. Mother Nature was very generous. Mother Nature was tough with us in 2016, but Mother Nature was very generous with us in 2018. And really in 2018, the viticultural management was the key point of success. If you were able to get the good quantity in terms of yields of Chardonnay, the Pinot Noir, there was a natural regulation of the Pinot Noir on the vine, but the Chardonnay was very productive. And we use twice more workforce on the field to get rid of some of the overproduction we had, just to make sure that we have this purity of the vintage. Because if you didn't do that, you will have very dilute 2018. And that will be the challenge of 2018. But if you were able to sacrifice part of your production for the quality, 18 will surprise more than one guy, especially the difference between when you test it at early stage of the fermentation and when you test it now after 4 or 6 months of bottling.
There's certainly no lack of concentration there. It's fascinating because you hear of some people being maybe tempted to push their yields a little bit too high in 2018, a very generous vintage. But I think that shows perfectly what you can do if you're rigorous in the vineyard. As you say, it's not a rich buttery style of Meursault. It has this kind of mineral tension beneath it, which minerality is different things to different people, but it has this clipped kind of crispness, which Meursault does brilliantly, I think.
Give you thirst. It's very crispy, very concentration, and then at the end the crispiness that is give you thirst. And as I told you, a Magnum is good for two if the other one doesn't drink too much.
Edouard, we had one question from Louise who said about the bottle shapes. You can see obviously some difference across those from Domaine Labruyere and across from Jacques Prieur, and is there a reason?
Yeah, actually, so at Domaine Jacques Prieur, we try to use the same bottle for whites and red, and that's the reason why they're pretty dark, to make sure that there is no goût de lumière, which means that the white won't be affected by the light, and so that's a specific shape. And at Domaine Labruyere, we use a specific shape for the clos, just because it's the bottle created by my grandfather. But it's a fantastic bottle. I like it very much. I grew up with that, but it's a bit heavy. And now I try to be organic and to be more sustainable. So I use a new bottle, which is 30% lighter than the traditional bottle of Le Clos. But in respect to my grandfather, I didn't shrink the bottle of Le Clos.
Perfect. Thank you.
Interesting question that's popped up about the taste of the grapes. So obviously this is quite key for winemakers, to decide when to pick. And there's a lot of tasting of grapes which goes on around harvest time. How would you describe the taste of the Chardonnay just before you pick it?
Well, we have, each time before harvesting, I'm sick of tasting grapes. So I like to taste an orange during the harvest because after tasting so many grapes in such a short period, it's very tricky. We taste with Nadine grapes 3 times during July, and like once every 2 or 3 days during August or September before harvest. And we like to taste the skin, the juice, and the seeds. And it's when all the stars are on the same lines, the quality of the skin, the quality of the juice, the pulp, and the quality of the seeds have reached the same grade of maturity, then we pick up. Before that, whether you have heavy skin, seeds that are too crispy, not enough mature, and then you have pulp more than juice, and that's whether it's for Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, to tell you the truth, same for Gamay, same for Merlot and Cabernet, and really finding the good balance. And my goal, more than anything else during the winemaking, when Nadine is making the winemaking and controlling it, but my goal is to make sure that we're on the same line with Nadine in terms of the 3 factors during when we taste the grapes, and seeds, skins, and the pulp. And when we have really the good balance between the maturity, the acidity, and the maturity of the seeds, we pick up. Is that clear? I'm not sure. I speak my own language, so sorry if I'm not clear. But then, if anybody wants to send a resume to do the harvest and taste the grapes with us, he's more than welcome.
Well, there's a few very nice comments in the Meursault about the Meursault in the chat as well, which I'll let you read. But it's basically sort of focusing on, as we've discussed, that sort of crisp, that precise character and fantastic freshness, which is sometimes misunderstood and not associated with Meursault.
Really, to have stopped the batonnage, so the stirring, to age the wine into big wooden vats, it allows the wine to express its terroir, its DNA, before than the wine, more than the winemaking. And I think since we have changed that, we have changed the approach of the wines of Domaine Labruyere very deeply, and I like that. Well, it's my taste, so I would not say that I don't like it, but I think we have changed, and we have really now creating not wine from Domaine Labruyere, but a real Meursault from Claude Mazeret, and which tastes different from the Meursault Charme Premier Cru or Meursault Perrier Premier Cru or Meursault Centenot or any other wine from the winery. So we really I like Nadine to be my wine couture, my haute couture winemaker. So I don't want to create a Domaine Labruyere wine. We have the responsibility of this terroir, and I don't want one terroir to taste like, look like, or be like another terroir. Each wine has to have into bottle its strong and unique DNA. It's what Bourgogne is meant for. So at Chateau Rouget, it's different. We blend at the end. In Bordeaux, we blend at the end into the label Chateau Rouget, even if each terroir plays its own role. But here in Burgundy, when you have 2 barrels of one terroir or 20 barrels of another, they have to be different. It's not because you have the same Pinot Noir or the same Chardonnay that you have to have the same wine. And it is not only the terroir, it's also the winemaking, it's also the way you respect the vineyard and the wine during the aging.
Brilliant. Well, I'd like to, there's more questions coming through, and I'm sure they'll just keep on coming, but unfortunately we're sort of running out of time, and you've already been generous enough, Edouard. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We are.
I have few friends to spend the night, so I can talk with you.
We are live with the 2019 Domaine Labruyere offer. We started at the beginning of this week, so hopefully everyone in this room potentially has already seen the offer. If not, please do get in touch with your salesperson, or if you are a new customer and a friend has brought you along to the tasting, give us a call, drop us an email. Do get in touch, and we'll make sure you have it. They are brilliant in 19. There's a juiciness to the fruit along with that structure, and I cannot implore you enough to explore and delve into Moulin au Vent. If you're a Burgundy lover, you will not see any better value, in my opinion, than what Moulin au Vent is offering. And by delve, I mean, properly explore, get a case and open them over time. The Bourgogne Gamay, for example, from Domaine Labruyere, I drink frequently and struggle to think of a better value case at £85 a 6 in Bond. And as you've tasted tonight, where you had the Champ-Cœur 17 and the Clos 16, both of those, just for info, on the 19 are 125 and 225 in Bond respectively. So it's incredible. That Le Clos value is just magnificent when you can benchmark it and put it against Premier Cru from Côte de Nuit and Côte de Beaune very easily. With Domaine Labruyere, we'll hope to be out next month, but wait for us. That will be coming as usual. But most importantly, thank you for attending. But Edouard, thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you, Edouard. Thank you very much.